The state of Florida has a lot of history, from the time it was explored by Europeans to present day. There's always something to do and always something to see. Let's bring the past into the present with one such location, Fort DeSoto National Park. The spit of land between Tampa and Bradenton is known as Mullet Key, and it was originally occupied by the Tocobago Indians from 1000 to 1500 AD. During the Age of Exploration, it was identified by Panfilo de Narvaez in 1529, but it would be another 10 years before European conquistador Hernando de Soto came ashore. The island of Mullet Key was largely left alone from that time until 1849, when the U.S. Army engineers, led by Colonel Robert E. Lee, surveyed the area. Their recommendation was that Mullet Key and the adjacent Egmont Key be fortified with coastal defense installations. Before anything could be done to the land, the Civil War broke out, and the closest fortifications came were the Union troops that occupied the key during the war. It wouldn't be until November 1898 when work began on a seashell concrete mixture for Fort DeSoto. The walls and ceiling of the structure would be made of a mixture of seashell, stone, and concrete. Fort DeSoto would boast two impressive batteries, Battery Laidley and Battery Bigelow. Battery Laidley would house 8 12-inch M1890 mortars that could fire up to 6.8 miles. Battery Bigelow housed two 3-inch 15-pound Driggs Seabury Model 1898 rapid-fire guns. The primary focus of these guns was to stop the faster, smaller vessels entering the waterway and protect the 1.25 miles surrounding the fort. At the time of its construction, the threat from Spanish attacks was still a worry. In April 1898, the battleship USS Maine was sunk in Havana Harbor, and the United States quickly rushed to war with the fading Spanish Empire. In the Caribbean, the threat of Spanish naval attacks was put to an end in the Battle of Santiago Bay. In December 1898, a peace treaty would be signed ending the war and the Spanish Empire's reach around the globe. The construction of fortifications for Mullet Key would continue until 1906, when it was completed. Along with the two batteries, the fort would also have 29 buildings, including barracks, hospitals, a guard station, a blacksmith shop, and a carpenter shop. Brick roads would crisscross the island with concrete sidewalks, and a narrow-gauge railroad was constructed to transport men and goods to and from the mainland. And here's a picture of my dad utilizing one of those many concrete sidewalks. In 1910, the Army units were moved from Fort DeSoto to Fort Morgan, Alabama, and a caretaker force was left until 1914. By that time, only an ordnance sergeant and game warden remained. During World War I, a larger force of 26 men, including 2 non-commissioned officers and 2 commissioned officers, were at the fort. In 1917, 4 of the fort's mortars were disassembled and shipped to Fort Rosecrans in San Diego. 5 years later, in November 1922, the Army announced they would inactivate Fort DeSoto, and by July 1, 1924, the fort was once again placed in a caretaker status. In 1926, all but 4 of the 12-inch mortars at Battery Laidley were removed. Between 1926 and 1938, the fort fell into a state of disrepair. The saltwater spray began to take a toll on the fort, as well as several hurricanes and tropical storms. Battery Bigelow became a casualty of one such storm in 1932, as it crumbled into the Gulf. Just southwest of Battery Laidley, you can still see the remnants of the battery in the surf. In September 1938, Pinellas County bought areas of Mullet Key for $12,500, roughly $257,636 today. The land was then leased to Percy L. Roberts, who intended to operate a ferry to and from the Key, establish a fishing village with restaurants, hotels, and a lively nightlife. So, just your typical spring break destination. But with war looming on the horizon, the War Department purchased the land back from the county, which voided Mr. Roberts' lease agreement for $18,404. The U.S. Army Air Corps then used the land as a practice bombing range, with the Key being a subpost of MacDill Field, now MacDill Air Force Base. In 1948, Mullet Key, along with the surrounding Sister Key, Hospital Key, Rattlesnake Key, and Scratch Key, were all sold to Pinellas County for $26,495.54, the equivalent of $330,743.50 today. Fort DeSoto was immediately opened to the public as a county recreation area. The county worked to restore the key while also preserving the historical fort situated on it. In 1962, the Pinellas Bayway was completed, making it possible to drive from mainland Florida to Mullet Key. This made it easier for beachgoers, fishermen, and history fanatics to visit it. A year later, it was officially dedicated as Fort DeSoto Park. And finally, on December 2, 1977, the Fort DeSoto batteries were listed on the Historical Register. The 4 12-inch M1890 mortars and the 2 6-inch Armstrong guns are the only guns of their type remaining in the United States. Fort DeSoto Park is a fun place to go and walk around and explore. It's like walking back in time with a lot of the buildings that remain, and the museum on the Key is one of the best in the state. I would also highly recommend snorkeling the ruins of Battery Bigelow. On calm days, you can clearly see the foundation of the battery at the bottom of the Gulf. Also, due to its location and proximity to all the major shipping lanes going to and from the Port of Tampa, you'll have the opportunity to see some cool ships like this one. Also, somewhat nearby is another point of interest that I would highly recommend seeing. Drew Field would have been used in tandem with Fort DeSoto during World War II and now houses Raymond James Stadium, home of the two-time Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Fort DeSoto may not have served in any major action, but it still boasted an impressive array of firepower that easily could have held its own against enemy ships entering Tampa Bay from the Gulf of Mexico. If you don't check it out for the history, it does have some pretty nice private beaches and some pretty impressive views. That does it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, check out my Twitter at PastAndPresent4. Thanks for watching.